Good morning. Thank you for tuning in to WBAI for the third of 5 shows on New York City Communities in Focus with the New York Women's Foundation. NYWF is very excited to bring you conversations with some of our grantee partners serving women and families and communities across all 5 boroughs of New York City. My name is Gail Black, and I'm the Public Communications Manager at NYWF, and I will be moderating these conversations. The New York Women's Foundation is a cross-cultural alliance promoting economic security for women and families in New York City. The foundation uses a participatory grant-making approach, engaging women from all walks of life across New York City to identify and support the most effective community-based solutions. Our grantee partners are women-led, community-based organizations and address a wide variety of issues, including workforce development, violence prevention, and reproductive justice, in order to address the complex challenges facing the women and families in greatest need. The foundation also engages in partnerships and public education initiatives like this one with WBAI in order to advance its efforts and highlight the work of our grantee partners. Today's conversation will be on issues facing women immigrants and their families, particularly around issues of employment, benefits, and domestic violence. Today we are being joined by 3 outstanding community leaders. Cecilia Gaston is the Executive Director of Violence Intervention Program, also known as VIP. VIP fills a gap in domestic violence services for Latinas and their children in a culturally competent environment that is supportive, non-judgmental, and respects each woman's right to self-determination. Thank you for joining us, Cecilia.
I am delighted to be here. This is such a great opportunity to let people know what we do and where to find help.
Thank you, Cecilia. We also have Stephanie Mulcock, the Executive Director of Cidadão Global. Cidadão Global is a community-based organization dedicated to promoting and defending the human rights of Brazilian immigrants and strengthening citizen participation and political visibility through leadership development, essential services, community organizing, civic engagement, arts, and culture. Thank you for joining us, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for inviting our organization. We're happy to be here.
And then we have Jessamyn Rodriguez, the founder and CEO of Hot Bread Kitchen. Hot Bread Kitchen increases economic security for foreign-born and low-income women and men by opening access to the billion-dollar specialty food industry. They do this through their culinary workforce and business incubation programs, Project Launch and HBK Incubates. Thank you for joining us today, Jessamyn.
Thanks. It's great to be here with some of my favorite community partners.
Thank you all so much for your time today and for all of your great work. So, Stephanie, I'd like to start with you. If you could talk a bit about the history and mission of Cidadão.
Sure. Cidadão Global was created around 2009, and it was created to address a need in the Brazilian community to really develop leadership from within the community in order to promote political visibility through leadership development and through community organizing, and also to promote economic development. We've been working on issues such as immigration and employment rights and cultural preservation and civic engagement, as well as community organizing of domestic workers and youth in order to promote social change that is favorable for immigrants.
And what are some of the leadership development strategies that Cidadão uses to develop the leadership of Brazilian immigrants and help them advocate for themselves?
Sure. We actually incorporate leadership development within every area of our organization. From the time a person walks into the door, usually people come to our organization looking for services, because we're the only organization that provides services in Portuguese for the Brazilian community specifically. So these are culturally specific and language appropriate services that they don't get elsewhere. So it's very important for monolingual Portuguese speakers. Once people come into the door looking for services, we explain to them what the organization is all about, and we'll schedule them for a one-on-one orientation where we explain to them that, yes, we'll provide you this service or this referral, but in exchange, you should contribute to your community through our organization. And contribution in that aspect can be an array of activities. Some of our favorite things is to help people address the pain and the struggles that they have gone through in their own immigration story. by telling that story. We find that once people come face to face with their own immigration stories and are willing to share it with the next generation or with their elected officials, magic happens not only within themselves but also within the community, and it really serves for people to really own their story and realize that they're not alone in whatever it is that they went through. Issues of violence, issues of really the effort to go through the border, the effort to really survive in invisibility sometimes. A lot of our clients are low-income Brazilian women, and they do a lot of work with domestic work, such as nannies and cleaning homes or working with the elderly. And sometimes these kinds of work lend themselves to invisibility. So showcasing their stories is a way to remind the people that they matter, that they're important.
Thank you. And can you talk a little bit more about the challenges with translation availability, specifically with Portuguese, and kind of the work that you've done to remedy that?
Sure. Language access has been a huge challenge for us. There's a very large Brazilian population, both in New York City as well as in the entire country, but they're severely undercounted. The figures right now here, I'll give you a good example. In 2011, the U.S. Census counted that there were 280,000 Brazilians in the United States, but the Brazilian Foreign Ministry, which is the organ that does the count in Brazil, estimated that 1,334,000 Brazilian people resided in the United States in the same year. So there is a really huge undercount that's created because of some policy problems. Brazilians are often counted as part of the Latino community, when in fact linguistically they're different and culturally they're different as well. So no resources are going to the Brazilian community that are appropriate in Portuguese. So what we get a lot is, I'll give you a really good example. I had a client come into our office just last week who had gone to the Human Resources Administration looking for public assistance. She had an open case, and she went in for her eligibility interview, and instead of being able to ascertain which language she spoke, they could not ascertain it and told her to go away and marked her as absent for her eligibility interview, which then caused her case to be closed. So we're now actively trying to reopen her case that was really unfairly closed. In violation of New York City Ordinance 120, which promotes, which assures that all New Yorkers, regardless of language, have access to city agencies through a language line, and also in violation of Local Law 73. So we're really trying to work that. I spoke to her, and she showed me. She said that she went through the front counter and showed they have a list of languages that they speak that includes about 20 languages, and Portuguese is not listed. We find that to be just really something that could be easily fixed, to just add Portuguese to the list. So she was given a Spanish translator. Of course, she does not speak Spanish. When she could not be understood and she could not understand anyone, they just sent her away, and that's really egregious.
Wow, and language accessibility is such a critical part of, most immigrants' experience. Cecilia, can you talk a little bit about?
Hi, Stephanie. I'm so thrilled that you brought up this issue, because in our work, we encounter this all the time. We actually had a woman from Senegal at one of the police stations, and they assumed she was Haitian and spoke Creole. And so she had to spend the whole night until and they never questioned the fact that she may have spoken another language, and she was fluent in Spanish. It's the assumption of that you don't know what you're doing, or you are somehow a subhuman because you don't speak English. it has a tremendous impact on the lives of our citizens and the lives of our immigrants in New York City. So I'm totally, I'm cheering everything that you're saying, because we encounter that so often, especially with the police in our cases when we call 911.
And
Thank you so much.
Oh, and and Stephanie, you mentioned a little bit about your work with domestic workers, and there have been some real advances made, particularly in New York, in the last couple of years. But what are some of the specific challenges that they're still facing? What more is needed to support domestic workers?
Sure. So in the year 2010, Cidadão was working in coalition. We still are actually working in coalition with other domestic worker organizations in New York City. And back then, in 2010, we worked to pass the New York State's Bill of Rights for domestic workers, which assured that domestic workers would be entitled to a minimum wage. Before then, and actually, according to the federal law, domestic workers are not part of the minimum wage law. So through our work, we were able to, along with other domestic worker organizations, we were able to change that law and have now so that domestic workers are protected. So when they are not paid for their work, we're able to file a claim for wage theft. The problem is that the women are very concerned with losing their job once they file the claims. They're also very concerned about telling their potential employers at the negotiating table that they know what their rights are and that they know they're entitled to a minimum wage and that they will work an X amount of hours for an X amount of money, because they're afraid that the potential employer will then say, well, this woman is just too knowledgeable about her rights, and she will later on cause a legal problem for us, and that's a risk we don't want to take. So we would rather hire somebody who is less knowledgeable of her rights. This is creating a problem of bargaining power for our community, where the community cannot go into the bargaining table and say, I deserve this X amount based on my legal protections, because they feel like the employer would just hire somebody who will take less or is less knowledgeable. What we're doing right now to address that lack of bargaining power is that we're really attempting to incubate domestic worker cooperative. We have been recruiting right now among our worker leaders in order to build a clean cooperative of domestic workers, so that we can really concentrate, elevate the standard of bargaining power in the industry.
And Stephanie, for those listening that may not know what a worker cooperative, can you explain a little bit?
Sure. A worker-owned cooperative is a business entity where everyone that participates in it is also an owner. It's a kind of collaborative enterprise that is democratically run, so that everyone gets a say and everyone gets a part of the profit.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephanie. And how can folks get involved with Cidadão and support your work?
Sure. There are many, many ways to get involved. I'm really glad you said that. The easiest way is to donate and donate any amount. If you are interested in making a donation, you can call our office at 718-619-8529. If you would like to get engaged in another way that's beyond being a part of funding us, you can also come and volunteer for us. We have several ways that you can volunteer. We're interested in artists. We're interested in website designers. Really, whatever your talent is, we can have a conversation and incorporate you as part of our organization. We really belong to the community, and we really want to be a part of the larger fabric that makes New York City. No more isolation and invisibility of civilians.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining us today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
So, Cecilia, can you tell me a little bit about the history and mission of VIP?
Of course. Fascinatingly, we have just finished celebrating our 30th anniversary. We were founded in East Harlem by a group of Latina women that identified they were working at a health clinic and realized that women kept coming in and circling in and circling in, but the fundamental domestic violence issues in the families were not being addressed. They were just addressing the symptoms, high blood pressure, mental health, all the stuff that would come out. And so we've been around for 30 years. We are now citywide. We are the only Latina organization that does citywide. And we are the only minority organization that has a full continuum of services, from emergency shelter beds to transitional housing. We have a small building in the Bronx where we can house women for about 2 years. And then we have offices in Queens, in Manhattan, and 3 sites in the Bronx. So we're small, but we're mighty. And we actually work with the women wherever she is literally at. Research has demonstrated that that's the most effective way to help women.
And in what ways are immigrant women, both documented and undocumented, more vulnerable to domestic violence and other forms of gender violence?
It's huge. Most people do not think that our immigration laws are already gender skewed. Women come in as dependents of the men in their families, and therefore they're already at a disadvantage. And in many ways, women are invisible. As Stephanie was saying, we take a lot of the jobs that nobody wants to do, and therefore they're very vulnerable. And if you are unauthorized to be in this country, you're having extra layers of invisibility and really abuse. And many of them, come from countries that have very strong patriarchal traditions, where they are literally, that's where they come from. And when you think about New York City, like 40-some% of all of the women and girls from New York City are foreign born. They were born somewhere else. And we come here with our own knapsacks and have sometimes very serious conflicts.
And on an individual level, what can folks do when they suspect or witness this type of violence publicly or privately?
I tell people you have to take a stand against violence. It really is as simple and as fundamental as that. We have a lot of tolerance in this society for violence of any type, and specifically for gender violence. I saw a couple of very young people. The young boy cannot be more than 14, screaming at a girl on 116th in the subway. And families came by with kids in their hands, individuals, everybody walked by, nobody tried to do anything. That means that they just tolerate it, and that is unacceptable to us. So a lot of the work that we do is raising awareness. So, for example, I was just recently trying to establish relationships with non-domestic violence partners so that they then become aware of the issues and know us as a resource and see us as a resource. I just got a call from Make the Road, who works with a lot of foreign-born, and how we can actually then help the staff identify those issues, and we can get the women and the men help before anything happens. Recently in the Bronx, I had a young man. I saw him. It was like an amazingly courageous thing to do. He was the only man in the room. We were doing a DV 101, and he had lost his job. His wife had lost her job, and they were beginning to fight, and he wanted to keep the family together. So there are all kinds of things that bystanders can actually do, and as individuals, we can actually take a stand.
And who are some of your partners in the field?
Well, for example, we have a lot of partners that do immigration law. We have a lot of partners that do domestic violence, family law, criminal court. Those are all things that we don't have a legal department. So we are very close related with legal services, legal aid. All of those are partners. And then we work a lot with people that are developing cooperatives, for example, because we know for a fact across the whole world, women earning their own money, reduces the violence in the family. So we are very, very strongly pushing for financial empowerment of the women and the children, actually. Get the children to learn early how our systems work, how to get a bank account, all of those things that are really important. And for an undocumented person, they don't realize that you can actually own a business. So working in a cooperative, it's a great way to really improve your wages. Because you're actually a co-owner, and that is legally allowed, while you are not allowed to be employed by somebody. And that's where exploitation comes in. Very recently, we had in Queens a young woman that came to us with intimate partner violence issues. And then we discovered that she was being trafficked, not sexually, but her work. So she was actually being trafficked. Labored, but we connected her to the Labor Department Trafficking Division. She was completely vulnerable in that respect, and all the money, all the earnings went to her abuser.
Can you talk about some of your work with consulates?
Oh, that has been a really systemic, has had a system impact in the city and actually even across the nation. We started many years ago with the Mexican consulate, who identified that there was a lot of violence, domestic violence in their community, and asked the New York Women's Foundation for help. We were able to get some funding to help the women and actually then connect them with the embassy, with the consulate, connect them with emergency services for them, and then really raise awareness in the family of domestic violence. But it works also the other way. We were able to train all of the staff at the consulate. And eventually, the Mexican consulates were trained by the National Latina Network across the country. So we are now working with other consulates so that they then raise awareness of the domestic violence issues among their populations. So it really has a huge impact because of the way the consulates then respond to the women in need.
And what more could we be doing? And that is, we as a city, we in this, the sector, general service providers, be doing to support survivors of domestic violence?
Well, primarily it's taking a stand in a very fundamental way, in a profound way, that you will not tolerate this. We definitely, like Stephanie, we would accept contributions, financial contributions. But we also actually train a group of women that have gone through our program, are no longer in crisis, to be volunteers and to do tabling and talking in their communities. I look very white and very privileged. No, it's important. Even though I am personally a survivor, I cannot go into a community that speaks Mixtecan, for example, because I don't speak Mixtecan. And that's another issue that was brought up by Stephanie. If you look Mexican, then you must speak Spanish. We have a lot of people in New York City that come from Latin America that do not speak Spanish. Like the Brazilians speak Portuguese. There are many indigenous languages that are actually languages. And then people assume, we have people that are trilingual. They speak Mixtecan, Spanish, and English. It's an amazing thing. This is the only country, civilized country, that underestimates the value of foreign languages. We don't really teach them. We don't cultivate, how wonderful it is to speak many different languages. So we work very hard on that one.
Yes. And how can folks get involved with your organization and support your work?
Again, we have a great website, www.vipmujeres, in Spanish, women in Spanish, VIPMUJERES. And we can actually accept volunteers for all kinds of different things, and as well as accept financial donations. We want people to get involved because this is how we're going to change society. So we really welcome everyone's involvement at very different levels.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Cecilia. And we're going to take a short break. Just a reminder that we are streaming live on WBAI.org, and you can call in at 212-209-2900.
There comes a time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying.
Oh, when it's time to lend a hand to life, the greatest gift of all.
We can't go on pretending day by day
that someone somehow will soon make a change.
We are all a part of God's great big family, and it's true, you know, love is all we need. We are the world, we are the children, we are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice we're making, we're saving our own lives. It's true, we'll make a better day, just you and me. Well, send them your heart, oh, so they know that someone cares.
So their cries for help will not be in vain.
We can't let them suffer, no, we cannot turn away.
Right now, they need a helping hand. No someone lie. We are the children. We are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving.
Oh, there's a choice we're making, we're saving our own lives.
It's true, we make a better day, just you and me.
When you're down and out, and there seems no hope at all.
But if you just believe, there's no way we can fall.
Well, let us realize, oh, that change can only come when we stand together as one. We are the world. We are the world. We are the children. We are the children. We are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving.
Gotta start giving. God is true, we make a better day, just you and
Welcome back. Again, I'm Gail Black from the New York Women's Foundation. Before the break, I was speaking with Cecilia Gaston, the Executive Director of Violence Intervention Program, and Stephanie Mulcock, the Executive Director of Cidadão Global. I'd like to bring in now Jessamyn Rodriguez, Founder and Executive Director of Hot Bread Kitchen. Hi, Jessamyn. Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me, Jessamyn?
Hear you. Hello, everyone.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us, Jessamyn. Can you talk a little bit about the history and mission of Hot Bread Kitchen?
Yeah, thank you so much. So we are a longtime partner of the New York Women's Foundation and have had a really wonderful opportunity to work with VIP as well, because we are a nonprofit social enterprise located in East Harlem. So the work that Cecilia does, I mean, really makes our work possible. So we are, primarily an organization that's dedicated to economic development for low-income and foreign-born women by really focusing on opening up channels to the specialty food industry. We have two programs, the larger of the two programs, and I think one that is really kind of unique is we offer a really intensive job training program for women who have passion, skill, and interest in the culinary arts. So many years ago, I had an important realization that in most parts of the world, women bake bread, but in New York City, there are 6,000 bakers, and only 500 of them are minority women. And so we have a very sort of punctual intervention where we take women who kind of have skill or interest in learning how to bake bread, and we provide a 9-month paid training program in an operating, functioning, high production bakery, and we provide classroom learning as well. So we do provide a lot of intensive English classes, but also kitchen math, basic computer skills, and readiness skills. And then we graduate women into well-paid jobs and management track jobs in the bakery industry. So we've placed women all over the city in some of the biggest bakeries, and we have a great relationship with Whole Foods, and we do a lot of staffing there. So we're taking women who have some barriers to employment, or significant barriers to employment. For many of them, this might be their first job in the formal sector, and we're really providing an intensive training to help them get the job. I think what makes it, I think, really accessible to the women that need it the most, the ones that have the highest barriers to employment, and something that is unfortunately not readily available, is that the training is paid. And so it's a 9-month to a year training program where women are being paid for their time in training. And so we are able to support women who otherwise might not be able to take time out of the kind of economic engine that is, necessary to keep the house running in New York City to do professional development. And so there's kind of 2 graduation outcomes. One is, like I said, we place, women every month in management track jobs in the city in food manufacturing. And then the other outcome is that we help women launch food businesses. So the second program that I mentioned is called HPK Incubates, and it's a culinary incubator. So we have 3,000 square feet of licensed commercial kitchen space, and we exist to help the woman who's, perhaps making tamales in her home kitchen and selling them on 116th Street in an informal way, and is constantly kind of keeping one eye open for the police, and, has amazing talent and recipes and passion about her food business, but doesn't have the time or the, the experience or the language skills, as we were mentioning, to, or the social capital or network to know how to formalize that business. And we provide access to a licensed commercial kitchen, which is a big issue for home producers, and then business supports. And so we have English for food business owners. We have workshops on logo development, financial readiness, and we help women launch food businesses and get that product out to a larger market. So that's the second of the 2 programs, and that program is open to women, men, and we have 30% of our members are subsidized, but it's open to the community at large.
And with HBK Incubates, can you talk about some of the challenges and successes you've seen regarding the involvement of low-income immigrant women in that program?
Yeah. I think my biggest takeaway, so the Workforce Development Program was the first program that we started at Hot Bread Kitchen, and many of the women that are coming into that job training program, to the workforce development, self-identify as entrepreneurial. Many of them want to start food businesses. They recognize that business ownership is, can allow a lot of economic freedom. They desire kind of that asset building part of it. They kind of are very interested in food business ownership. But when it comes down to it, are a little bit risk adverse. They have to be, because they're coming from, complicated home situations, and they make the decision to go into management track positions. So we've aggressively, tried to sink staff resources into connecting with the community to try to bring in the subsidized members that really need the services that we're providing in the community. And I think my biggest takeaway, this is the second program we launched, is that entrepreneurship is really slow, even for well-capitalized, people that don't have kids, that have, money to hire staff to support them. Even then, building a business is very slow, and building a food business is slow, and margins are slim. And for those subsidized members who have very, often complicated home situations and are double dutying as, in childcare, doing their work and trying to sustain the household economics of the family, we're seeing that those subsidized businesses require a lot of supports and are growing slowly.
I cannot. I want to jump in and really do a shout out for what Hot Bread Kitchen is doing, not only in our neighborhood immediately, but across the city. And it's firing up hope for women that could see this as a possibility. And they do extraordinary work. I cannot even.
They do. They are
I
work
hope
in the neighborhood. They're excellent.
It's not only in the neighborhood. I mean, they're
Across
just
the city.
the work that Jessamyn is doing in the Hot Bread Kitchen. It's amazing, really amazing.
Well, thank you. I think like Cecilia and I are trying to mastermind finding the next Goya. I think one issue that we face with low-income women entrepreneurs in particular, there are not a lot of models of success. And so if I kind of pinpointed why, some of the male-owned businesses, these kind of finance banker types that like write a fancy business plan and come to us and like talk about exit and think about scale and talk about bringing in investors, like they're following a certain model of business development. And for many women in the program, and the women that I know that work with Celia, like there isn't a model for what that looks like. And so we need to really invest in, all of us together that are serving low-income women in the city need to find who those, high potential entrepreneurs are with interesting products and really invest a lot of resources so we start to get models of what kind of financial independence could look like and feel like. And that is kind of the piece. I'm looking for the net. We're really...
Justina, we have a caller calling in right now that we're going to take.
Great.
Hello? Who is this? Thank you for calling in.
Hello, is this WBAI?
Yes.
Can you tell me the name of the organization that is being represented on the air right now?
There are 3 organizations that we've had on the show today.
The one that's on right now. The women's program for baking?
Yes, Hot Bread Kitchen.
Excuse me, can you turn your radio down, please?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Another room. Is there more than one person on the line?
Hot Bread Kitchen is the organization that I think you're referring to.
Hot Bread Kitchen?
Hot Bread Kitchen.
Hot Bread Kitchen.
Yes.
Do they have a website?
Yes, they do. It's hotbreadkitchen.org.
Hotbreadkitchen.org. Am I on the air right now?
Yes. So if you could turn your radio down in the background, that'd be great.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm going to hang up now.
All right. Thank you so much for calling in.
Well, I have a question, too.
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Let me turn this down. Close the door.
Thank you.
Is this just for immigrant women or for women who are not immigrants?
So at Hot Bread Kitchen,
low income.
So at Hot Bread Kitchen, in the bakery training program, the job training program, we serve all women with barriers to employment. Historically, we have traditionally served more women who are foreign-born, but we right now are open to serving women who come from all backgrounds, but we're really trying to target women who need the training the most. So it's a competitive process, and we have there's an application process, and you can apply. There's details online, or you can come to our storefront or send people to our storefront at 115th and Park Avenue and fill out an application.
Hi, we have another caller on the line. Hello? All right. Can you speak up?
Yes. My name is Sandra Ramos, and I started the first shelter for battered women in my home in 1970.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, we're struggling very much because the funds have been cut because they don't like to keep people in shelter, and they don't like us because we're very strong advocates for the women, and we fight with custody battles and a lot of things. And we have a lot of women that are undocumented, and I wanted to know if there was something that we could do together, or if do you have a shelter for the women to get out of their home with the batterer?
Absolutely. This is Cecilia Gaston from the Violence Intervention Program. We certainly have a shelter, and we can actually keep, according to the state laws, a person up to 180 days, and we help them get benefits, hook them up with, hopefully, with permanent housing. You know, housing in New York City is a huge problem, in particularly for women. And if you have a need of housing and the lease is in the abuser's name, very often the laws are not on your favor. And most of society assumes that it is your job to get out. So yes, we do have shelter. We actually also have transitional housing. But bear in mind that most women manage to leave an abusive relationship without going into shelter. Shelter is very, very drastic.
We have another caller on the line. Hi, who's calling in?
I was on before and I cut off.
Oh, sorry. Is this Sandra?
Yes.
Hi, did you hear the rest of Cecilia's answer?
No, I only heard her say 90 days, but that's all I heard.
No, we can actually keep somebody in shelter up to 180 days and then still get extensions. But
that's wonderful.
Yes, the important thing is that everyone can stay for free. They don't have to pay. So that's a huge advantage.
How do you get funding?
We get funding through, the federal, state, and city monies. It's a combination of all of the above. And it's actually a very drastic thing. Most women leave the abusive relationship without going into shelter. Remember, most people assume that leaving is the safest thing that you can do. But I like to remind people that 75% of homicides occur after you leave. So there's all kinds of ways to get help, to get out of a relationship without becoming homeless. So just give us a call. Go to our website.
I don't do website. Can you give me your phone number?
Yes, 212-410-9080.
410-9080. And your name is Cecilia?
Cecilia.
Thank you so much
for Sandra Ramos, and I will have either myself or Xenia or do you have people that speak French? We have a lot of people that speak Spanish, but not French.
Well, I speak a little French myself, but we also use Language Line. If you have someone call and it's in a language that we do not speak, we hook up with Language Line.
Yeah, we're not allowed to be on the Language Line because we're not considered a member of the coalition, even though I started the first shelter. But I can talk to you about that
yes.
in person. But we have a particular woman that's from Haiti, and she speaks a little Spanish because of the Dominican Republic, but her language that she's most comfortable is French. One of our board members speaks French, but she's not, there all the time. She works at the UN.
Okay.
So I thought maybe you could help. But we've brought her into African services. Do you have your own legal?
We do not have legal department, but we have partners with all kinds of access to legal services.
Thank you so much for calling in, Sandra. And now, Jessamyn, I wanted to talk a little bit about the new initiative just launched by the Department of Small Business Services. For folks that are listening, you can go to nyc.gov/WeNYC. The Department of Small Business Services launched the Women Entrepreneurs NYC program, and their goal is to reach 5,000 women entrepreneurs and small business owners in the next 3 years by supporting them with business courses, financing assistance. And Small Business Services already does extensive work in the immigrant community. Why is it so critical that now they have this Women Entrepreneurs program and through which they can really reach immigrant women?
So this is a really new initiative, and I'm really excited to be included in it. From my experience thus far, I'm getting, that the city is really investing a lot in women entrepreneurs and recognizing that there is an economic powerhouse, an engine of economic development that's a little bit under-supported or untapped right now in New York City. And so Maria Torres Springer, the commissioner of SBS, and Alicia Glenn, who's the deputy mayor for economic development here in the city, are putting together, I think, a really stellar, amazing group of women who work with female entrepreneurs or are successful entrepreneurs, and really knowledgeable about how these things work to, I think, rethink what services the city offers to support immigrant women, and in particular low-income and immigrant women. So I'm proud to be part of the task force, we NYC, and start to get my hands into these issues, because it's something that I can't say that I don't know the solution, and unfortunately I don't know who does, and I can't point to any partners in the city that are doing really, really nailing it on helping low-income immigrant women start businesses. I think it's a really tough thing to do. So the more resources, the better.
There's a city council initiative on launching collaboratives this year. They've actually set some money aside for that. So, Stephanie, I would really love for you to get in touch with the community of collaboratives. There's a whole effort at the city level to nurture democratic workplaces. So there's hope.
Yes.
There's really hope for economic development for women.
Absolutely. And Jessamyn, how can folks get involved and support Hot Bread Kitchen?
So the easiest way is to buy our bread. We are a social enterprise, and all of the bread that we make in the training program are sold to support our intensive training. And so our breads are available all over the city, at all of the Whole Foods in the city, and 13 different farmers markets. There's a full list of where you can purchase our product on our website. So the easiest and most delicious way to support us is through buying our products. We are a nonprofit as well, and we are still philanthropically supported. So that is an important piece, which has historically been, an amazing partnership with the New York Women's Foundation. And then we are always looking for new community partners. We need to really connect. We are a small organization. We don't have a huge outreach arm, and so we are always looking to connect with community partners in the city that either know good food entrepreneurs or aspiring food entrepreneurs, or are already working with women who face barriers to employment that we can work with.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jessamyn. And any last comments, Cecilia?
Yes, definitely. I hope
comments.
that all the listeners get involved. There are many ways to become a philanthropist. You don't have to be a multimillionaire. I really encourage people to do the monthly giving for any of these organizations. Those are essential people. A cup of coffee, a few cups of coffee a month makes a huge difference for our organizations.
Thank you, Cecilia, Stephanie, and Jessamyn for your time today and for all of your critical work. Thank you to WBAI and Cidadão McLaughlin for all of your work and support in this effort. And thank you for all of those tuning in. You can join us next week, Tuesday, March 24th at 10 a.m. for a conversation on the sex trafficking of minors in New York. You can stay up to date on the participants and the work of the New York Women's Foundation and all of our grantee partners by visiting NYWF.org and following us on Twitter at NYWomensFDN. Again, my name is Gail Black, and thank you for joining us today. Have a great week.